State Wildlife Grants Program was created in 2001 and provides federal dollars to each state for wildlife identified as species of greatest conservation need. State wildlife grants provide funding to projects that restore and enhance wildlife populations and habitats by taking action before a species becomes endangered. This is one of the key sites of the Casco Bay Shorebird Monitoring Project on the coast of Maine.
We are looking on the Royal River, which is in the town of Yarmouth, Maine. This is an area that we have designated as significant wildlife habitat for shorebirds. This is under our Natural Resources Protection Act. So we actually regulate development activities along the shoreline. This particular project, the Casco Bay Shorebird Conservation, is a long-term monitoring study. And like any species management, what you need first is monitoring. We need to know if these species are increasing, decreasing, or staying stable. We have shorebirds coastwide from Kittery to Lubec, and that's the way we'd like to keep it. Nationally, shorebird numbers are in a state of decline. It is very concerning. So we're trying to do what we can for the birds that use our coast to stage as they go south to the wintering grounds.
This habitat is crucial to migrating shorebirds. Without this rich ecosystem, the shorebirds will not be able to complete their seasonal migration.
Different waves of populations are coming down from the Arctic to come to the Maine coast and to fuel up and rest and prepare for the next leg of their migration, which is a nonstop flight across the Atlantic down to South America. So we feel our coastline is very important for the birds that come here. Individual birds that come here are only here for about 2 weeks. And in that time, they have to double their body weight so they have the fuel to make that nonstop trip across the ocean. Once they're out over the ocean, they're committed. They can't sit down and rest. They have to fly the entire way. So that's why we're very concerned about our shorebird habitats.
These shorebirds are important components of the environment here on the coast, so protection of these animals also benefit the surrounding coastal communities.
Shorebirds are a great indicator species. Towns are very concerned about the health of the mudflats because they do support the clamming industry, bait worm harvesting, and tourism. So shorebirds are a great indicator. If we start losing, say the numbers start dramatically declining in this particular site, then the town of Yarmouth knows there's an issue here.
Unlike game animals, which have license fees and other tax funds for support, shorebirds in Maine have less funding available to support their management and conservation.
State wildlife grant monies have given us a unique opportunity to do this project. In the 1920s and 30s, waterfowl populations were declining such as shorebird populations are today. Back then, with the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, they could establish bag limits, hunting seasons. But what they also did is they created the waterfowl duck stamp, federal duck stamp, state duck stamp. That was an opportunity that if you wanted to hunt waterfowl, you had to pay. And those revenues went directly into the resource and were critical in habitat protection, habitat enhancement for waterfowl. For shorebirds, we have nothing like that. And yet we have users, we have birders, we have ecotourists, we have a lot of people taking photos of shorebirds and selling them on the internet. And where this is good for the local economy, none of these revenues are going back into the resource. So state wildlife grant monies are finally, we have an opportunity to tap some funding to really put back into the resource.
Many projects funded by state wildlife grants aim to identify and address problems that affect wildlife before a species declines to dangerous levels. These monitoring studies also evaluate the efficiency of current wildlife management actions.
Part of this Casco Bay monitoring program is after 5-10 years we'll be able to determine, are these protection initiatives sufficient? Are we actually sustaining our birds, or are they too restrictive?
There are many partners that play crucial roles in the Casco Bay Shorebird Monitoring Project. These partners provide funding and contribute time and resources to ensure the success of this project.
We have very little knowledge of shorebird roosts offshore, and yet Casco Bay has many, many islands and rocks and ledges that could provide roosting. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is doing shorebird surveys offshore. By getting baseline information now on shorebird use offshore, then we will compare it as the years go by. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is very helpful in that regard.
In the past, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service grant programs have been very successful in maintaining and restoring other wildlife populations here in Maine.
State wildlife grant monies have provided us with funds. We have a wintering population of harlequin ducks, which are state threatened, and we have a wintering population of purple sandpipers. Both species share offshore rocks and ledges to feed and roost on throughout the winter. That's their habitat. They come south to Maine to winter. And state wildlife grant monies have enabled us to hire a boat and cruise and go out throughout the winter and monitor both these species. Harlequin ducks, we only have about 1,800 birds wintering here. The eastern North American population is about 2,400 birds. So we have a huge responsibility for that particular species wintering off our coastline. Certainly if we had access to more state wildlife grant monies, we would do this intensive long-term monitoring program for shorebirds on other watersheds in Maine. Cobscook Bay, fairly pristine area, but our surveys indicate that numbers are declining there, and we'd like to know why.
State wildlife grants play a key role in protecting the vitality of our country's wildlife. Without this funding for proactive conservation, some of our most magnificent species could be lost forever.